what's the perfect bike to ride around a racetrack for a track day, or for racing for that matter? Obviously something like this, a BMW S1000 R. It's a fantastic bike, very fast, but it might be a little too much for some people. Sometimes it's better to start out a little smaller, like this, the Honda Grom. But that might be too small for some. So some people like racing bikes that they can also enjoy looking at. Something a little more classic, a little more retro, a little more beautiful in kind of a 20th century, mid-20th century, 1950s race car kind of way. Enter the BMW R9t Racer. This has got the classic BMW Boxer twin configuration. So some fine folks in Europe had a great idea of why not taking some R9Ts, making a spec series. They're calling it the Boxer Cup 2.0. Now back in the States about 10 to 15 years ago, we had a Boxer Cup series here. A friend of Motorcycle.com had the idea of bringing that back here in the States and invited us to help develop the motorcycle. So what we're going to be doing is, today is a shakedown test. We got our good friends, Bill and the rest of the gang from Cali Track Days that welcomed us here and did a little filming with us. And it just so happens that Bill tells me he has an R9T himself. So it'll be interesting to kind of get his input on the whole idea of a Boxer Cup series. So we're going to go here, ride the Boxer, develop it. We've got a few parts that we've already put on it. I think it's got a quick shifter, an Arrow exhaust system. We're looking to develop the bike a little bit more before our first race, which is going to be an AHRMA race here at Buttonwillow. That's the American Historic Motorcycle Racing Association. But in the meantime, today's kind of the shakedown. I've personally never ridden a BMW Boxer on the racetrack, so I'm kind of curious to see what these are all about. So let's find out. So this is the bike I'm going to be racing here. This is the R9T, and the Racer, that's also an R9T. That's Gary from San Diego BMW and AHRMA. These guys are helping to develop the bikes for the series, and we're going to be kind of figuring things out with them and discussing what works and what doesn't, and hopefully get the bikes ready for the first round that we'll be doing here at Buttonwillow Racetrack in a couple of weeks. So with me, we've got AHRMA Manelian. Ash owns a great shop called AHRMA Motorcycles, ironically enough. Gary Orr, owner of San Diego BMW. Bill Schaefer, owner of Cali Track Days. We had him on very recently. We did a story, and he just happened to recently purchase an R9t Racer as well. So I figured he's a good person to have on and get some feedback. Have you ridden yours before on the track, Bill?
So I bought mine and 2 days later took it to the track. So I essentially broke it in on the track. Some people thought I was crazy. I put about 100 miles off the track, and then here we are back at the track.
So when I spoke to you on the phone and I told you why we were coming up, you kind of got excited when I mentioned the possibility of a spec race series with R9Ts, and you said, well, I don't want to race, but I'll race that. So what did you mean by that?
When I bought the bike, one of the guys at the dealership had mentioned something about, oh, did you hear the Boxer? They're talking about a Boxer Cup. And I was like, that's rad. I thought it was so cool. And so today, you know, as we were on track, I talked about, I have no intention of racing. I do not want to race. I'm not a racer. I'm not going to race. But I'm probably in to race with you guys. How you described it as the gentleman race, you know, the bike is rad. The bike is so cool out on track. I mean, I had such a blast today. Racing the S1000 is a whole different story. You're in a whole different category.
Because you know I was going to go there because you have an S1000.
I do have an S1000.
Which seems like an obvious choice for a track bike.
Right. And this is my street bike, so it's really, that's what I bought this bike for. But in the time that I've owned it, I've put more track miles on it, and I really love it on the track. But what's nice about this, you can't get into too much trouble on the track with it. But I think the people that are going to be out riding it with you guys are like, look, I think you guys would give me a little space if needed in a corner, right? So I like that. So that's what kind of appeals me to
Gary, you own a BMW dealership, but does that necessarily mean, do you have much experience riding an R9T on the track?
I have a little experience riding R9Ts. I've raced a Boxer in the past, before the R9T came out, but a very similar drivetrain. So I'm very familiar with riding that bike on the track. What I'm excited about is developing the bike for somebody to ride, trying to put the best package together, and again, helping get more exposure for the racer class. If we can get this spec class together for next year for a national series, I think it would be great for the bike, it'd be great for us. But I also know that it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. If you watch the old Boxer Cup classes or watch the Racer Cup that's going on now in Europe, they're really exciting to watch because the bikes are so similarly matched, you know. Everybody's pushing hard and having fun, giving each other a little space, sure, but they're all serious about winning, you know, so.
We just started the development, you know, and particularly with the power curve, learning the power curve and just seeing how this factory computer is going to, you know, how it's going to work on the track. The tuning process is tedious, it's involved. As you know, from a suspension standpoint, you got brakes, you got tires, you got suspension, and then you got performance. You know, so to make it all work and all work right as a package is, you know, it's a little bit of work. But I'm excited about doing it. I'm having a great time. Gary's a new friend, and so is Mike, and I'm just really enjoying the company and getting to do this experience together. It's a good thing.
I was pleasantly surprised. You know, I was expecting it maybe to feel a little underpowered or a little heavy, and it's got a really nice power curve. Like I was saying earlier, you know, it's a flat torque curve, so the moment you crack that throttle you bounce off the rev limiter, it pulls nice and even and can still hustle. But the difference between, let's say, like this and like a big, you know, 1200 V-twin water-cooled Panigale or KTM Super Duke or something like that, it doesn't really want you to come in there and, you know, point and squirt. You know, you want to carry nice flowing lines, because there's some things like you have to be aware of, which Mike was telling me earlier about. You know, don't lean it over too far because you can lever the front wheel off the ground on the left and the rear wheel off the ground on the right, and Osh is not going to be very happy with you if you do that. I haven't touched the cylinder head down yet, so I don't know where the limit is, you know, and I don't
You touching the cylinder head, you're crashing.
Yeah. So I'm trying to like ease into it. You know, so the peg feelers, leaving them on, I think was not a bad idea. It kind of gives me a warning. We're getting down more. So I was every time we came up to some curbing, you know, I was a little. Quickly, I started adapting the bike. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes, and you know, when we get the suspension that you were talking about, and getting a little more ground clearance.
I was pleasantly surprised to see, you know, kind of that torque kick in at the bottom end and then the horsepower kick in. I mean, the power band is just perfect. I mean, it felt really, really good. The only thing is the bumping off the rev limiter, because I'm used to my big, you know, 13,000 RPMs. But, you know, I forget to shift sometimes, so, you know, bop, 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 bop.
It quickly taught me the same thing. When I came in after the first session, I was like, okay, shift earlier and don't downshift so aggressively, you know?
Yes.
It's like hop, 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 hop. It's giving you a lot of feedback, but it's doing it in a way that's forgiving.
Yes.
You know, and it tells you what it wants, and it's like, no, don't downshift all at once and at that RPM. And then you go, okay. And once you start doing what the bike's kind of asking you to do, it really becomes a fun bike to ride around a racetrack quick. The tires were great. I didn't have the front or the rear slide or step out on me once at all. I thought they were really good. Tires were not an issue at all.
And even on those little, on the stock tires, I felt pretty good on it. So, you know, I think the bike is very planted. I think the weight and just the distribution of the bike, I got the suspension a little bit more adjusted on mine. And the bike felt on our little lunchtime run, it felt really, really good. Really, really planted, just nice and even. So I can see suspension on that thing. And like you said, rear sets, I would like some rear sets higher.
Once you get one component working well, you start going a little faster, then I think something else. Like the first session, I was just getting used to the bike. The second session, I'm like, okay, now I understand how to ride it. Then we started touching down some hard parts. One of them was the gear shift lever. Luckily, it didn't break off or, you know, knock the bike out of gear. But these are all things that, you know, we're figuring out as we go. So I'm really excited to see what the bike's going to be like. It's a process, and it's a fun process. So for the second half of the day, past 6,000, there was something causing a power issue. Still doing that thing where it cuts out. So I mean, we know it's not the, so you disconnected the quick shifter obviously, so it's not that.
I did hear it breaking up when you're coming down, but I couldn't tell if you were on the throttle, if that was just a deceleration, backfire from the exhaust.
No, that was full throttle doing that, and then I like roll off, trying to get it to catch, and when I let the revs down a little bit, it seems to come back online. Okay. So hopefully, Osh can get in there, figure out what it is, and we'll get the bike developed and ready for the first round coming up in about 3 weeks back here at Buttonwillow, which we're going to report on here on Motorcycle.com. So stay tuned. This was just a little teaser to introduce you to the project we got going on with some interesting people involved. Bill, thank you for accommodating us again and hooking us up with the garage. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We got a few sponsors that would like to thank Arrow Exhaust, Rapid Bike for the tuning and the quick shifter, which when it was hooked up was working fantastic. Of course, Messler Tires with the K1 DOT tire. That thing was sticking all day long. Come back to Motorcycle.com soon and we'll have some AHRMA coverage for you for the first round here at Buttonwillow, as well as Utah and Barber. Be sure and look for the full story on Motorcycle.com. Thanks again.